In today's biased news, Cornel West runs for president, more revelations about the Nord Stream sabotage, and a massive dam gets blown up. On Monday, activist and public intellectual Cornel West announced that he's running for president in the 2024 election as a candidate for the People's Party. West made the announcement on Twitter, saying, "I have decided to run for truth and justice. I care about the quality of your life. I care about whether you have access to a job with a living wage, decent housing, women having control over their bodies, healthcare for all." It's worth mentioning that the People's Party is an ideological hodgepodge of vaguely populist sentiment, and has some worrying ties to far-right ideologues. West has previously lamented that American voters are forced to choose between, quote, neo-fascists like Donald Trump and milquetoast neoliberals like Joe Biden. Although he has not released an official platform yet, his public statements suggest a slate of policies like Medicare for all, the banning of corporate lobbying, a push to disband NATO, ending US military adventurism and foreign military aid, and abolishing student debt. West has also accused the current bipartisan government of hiding, quote, the truth about the Ukraine war, the Pentagon, Wall Street, and big tech. Cornel West is an activist and professor of philosophy and Christian practice at the Union Theological Seminary, and was previously a professor at Harvard. He has long criticized the neoliberal establishment in the United States, describing himself as a non-Marxian socialist. Many liberals are already lambasting West online for threatening to, quote, split the Democrat vote, which would hand the election to the Republican candidate, many of these people citing harm reduction. This claim might hold some water if the current Democratic president hadn't overseen the destruction of women's bodily autonomy, more deportations, more children in cages at the border, increased insecurity for American workers, more funding for militarized police, and a complete abdication on climate issues. Modern history has shown that under a system set up by and for the capitalist class, elections are simply a facade to maintain their power and privilege by obfuscating ruling interests, and keeping people complacent through respectability politics and the illusion of choice. Real change has only ever come outside the framework of this theater, through working-class organizations and dual power institutions like we've seen in socialist experiments and revolutions around the world. According to a report by the Washington Post, the United States was aware of a Ukrainian plan to attack the Nord Stream pipelines 3 months before they were damaged in September of last year. The CIA learned about the plan in June through a European spy agency, which indicated that a 6-person team of Ukrainian special forces intended to blow up the Russia to Germany pipeline. The information was leaked on Discord by a member of the Air National Guard, who was subsequently arrested and charged. The CIA shared the intelligence report with Germany and other European countries at the time. The explosions that damaged the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines occurred in the economic zones of Sweden and Denmark, and both countries, as well as Germany, are currently investigating the incident. While the jury is still out, it certainly would not come as any surprise if the US or one of its allies was indeed involved in this act of terrorism, as that has long been the suspicion among geopolitical experts. In France, protesters continue to oppose Macron's pension reforms, even briefly storming the headquarters of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. The trade unions say they aim to pressure lawmakers into reversing the decision to raise the retirement age. The recent protests have seen a lower turnout compared to previous demonstrations, with about 281,000 people participating across the country, down from 782,000 on May 1st. Macron has defended the pension reforms, citing the need to address the pension deficit, while trade unions have argued for alternative solutions, such as taxing the rich. Some protesters have threatened to disrupt the 2024 Olympics if Macron doesn't back down. The government has deployed a significant number of police officers, and some disruptions to fuel deliveries and air travel have been reported. The opposition-sponsored motion to cancel the minimum pension age increase will be reviewed in the French parliament, but it's expected to be shot down. On June 7th, the Kakhovka Dam on the Dnipro River in southern Ukraine, which separates Russian and Ukrainian forces, was breached, leading to flooding in the war zone. Ukraine has accused Russia of destroying the dam, while Russia claims that Ukraine sabotaged it to cut off water supplies to Crimea and divert attention from its counteroffensive. The dam is part of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant and spans 2 miles across the river. The reservoir created by the dam, which covers a vast area, supplies water to Crimea and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, which is under Russian control. The International Atomic Energy Agency stated that there is no immediate risk to the plant's safety, but emphasized the importance of preserving the cooling pond. Ukraine claims that Russia conducted an internal detonation of the dam to prevent Ukrainian troops from crossing the river, while Russia alleges deliberate sabotage by Ukraine. The breach of the dam is expected to impact the area significantly, with evacuations taking place on both sides of the front line. And in positive news of the day, the long-term rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia seems to be slowly coming to a close, thanks to local goodwill, as well as Chinese diplomatic efforts in the region, crowned by the opening of Iran's embassy in Saudi Arabia. The ceremony was attended by diplomats and officials of both countries, marking the first reopening of the diplomatic mission in 7 years. This comes after an agreement in March, brokered by China, resulted in the restoration of diplomatic ties and the reopening of embassies between the two countries. That's all for today. We'll be back day after tomorrow with more news. If you'd like to see episodes with more in-depth analysis, consider supporting the show on Patreon so we can grow and expand.